Welcome to BuiltForward, the podcast exploring where construction is heading over the next decade and how AI and other emerging technologies will and won't transform the industry. I'm Jason Jacobs, a longtime startup founder, investor, and the host. Let's get into it. Today's guest is Furman Haynes, co-founder and CEO of WorkHero, which he describes as the AI back office for small HVAC contractors. And he means the smallest ones, the 1, 2, and 3 truck shops. Invoicing, permits, heat pump rebates, all the paperwork an owner ends up doing at night and on weekends instead of going to their kid's soccer game. WorkHero takes it off their plate entirely, using a combination of software and expert office managers who work inside whatever systems the shop already uses. Furman came at this from workforce development. He spent his early career building apprenticeship programs, and then more than a year learning the trades from the inside, doing ride-alongs and hanging around a supply house outside Boston, handing out cold drinks to contractors and talking to anyone who would talk back. They raised a $5 million seed round last fall. Ed Smith, who you heard from in episode 1, is the one who told me I had to get Furman on the show. And most of my conversations lately have been about mid-sized firms and up. Furman has deliberately gone the other way, into the long tail of one of the most fragmented industries in the country. So I wanted to understand what he's building, where he thinks this market is going, and what he's learned along the way. It's a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Furman Haynes, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason. How's it going, man?
I'm tired. For whatever reason, when I went to bed last night, I knew it was going to be a terrible night's sleep, and sure enough, it was a terrible night's sleep, and I had to cart my son off to the golf course bright and early this morning, and he also had a terrible night's sleep, so maybe there's something in the air. But how are you doing?
Something spooky going on. I am doing great. Coming off of a little bit of a sprint work-wise myself, but August is hopefully going to chill out a little bit.
Well, Ed Smith from Amply put us in touch. He was guest number 1. You are, I think by the time this goes out, you'll be guest number 4. And like Ed, residential HVAC and used to being more on the host side of the mic on these podcasts than on the guest side. So I appreciate you switching sides and coming on the show.
This will be fun. We'll see if I can actually answer questions instead of just ask them.
Yeah, and it was Ed that put us in touch as well.
It is.
Although I think
Yes.
So Chad from Workshop Chad and Eleanor are involved, and they're my neighbors. So
That's right.
So yeah, it's a small little world here. But
Plenty of good people.
To kick things off, Furman, just maybe give the 30 seconds or a minute on WorkHero and what you do.
Sure. I'm Furman Haynes, co-founder and CEO of WorkHero. We are the AI back office for small contractors, specifically in the HVAC industry. We got started because we spent a lot of time with the guys at 1 truck or 2 trucks or 3 trucks. And if you spend a lot of time with those guys, you notice a couple of things. The first is that they don't have anyone else in the office to help them with all the admin, and they're spending nights and weekends. We have now a stat for this. Between 10 to 20 hours per week on average is just spent on invoicing, on heat pump rebates, on permits, on all of this paperwork. As you might imagine, this is the work that weighs down any small business owner, but especially when you are doing field work and you are out in the field all day and then you need to get back at night and be on your computer or spend weekends skipping your kids' soccer games to do this work. It not only takes up your time, but it's just the soul-sucking work of being a small business owner in the skilled trades, and specifically in the HVAC industry. We think we've seen something like inflation is a word that's being used a lot in the economy right now. We think we've seen something like admin inflation in this market. Like there's increasing amounts of paperwork actually for different parts of the business that are popping up. What WorkHero does is takes that work off of the owner's plate completely. We see there's some existing field service software out there that is great as a system of record, as a place to store your data. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually do enough for the owner. It is a tool that they have to use. They have to get something out of to actually provide the value. And WorkHero completely handles all parts of office and administrative work through a combination of software and services, of actual office managers who are a core part of our team and are really a huge reason that we can provide the kind of value that we do.
What led you into this area, and what led you into this problem within this area?
Yeah, so my background, I grew up in Tennessee, had family, I like to say I come from a family of bad engineers and one good electrician. If I had tried to go into the trades, my mechanical aptitude would have probably led me to not being that successful, so I didn't. However, saw firsthand the kind of impact that, especially being your own owner, can have. For one of my uncles, I then spent my early career building apprenticeship programs and really thinking about workforce training a lot, which led me to the skilled trades in recent years. And we spent over a year doing a real deep dive into the industry, doing ride-alongs with contractors, hanging out at one specific supply house when I still lived up in Boston. And there was a Johnstone Supply where I would go. I got to know the counter guys really well. I would hand out cold drinks to contractors and just like spend time with these guys. And that led us to some initial hypotheses we had about solving the talent shortage, which is very real still in this industry, to understanding the beauty of an industry made up of tens of thousands of small business owners. You know, the skilled trades more broadly, but specifically HVAC is one of the most fragmented industries in the country, as fragmented actually as the restaurant industry. And so you have tens of thousands of former technicians turned owners who are craftsmen, who love the work that they do. I always think about a specific small conference down in Florida that inspired a lot of what became WorkHero. This conference is hosted every year by someone named Brian Orr, who runs a YouTube channel called HVAC School. And the conference is called the HVAC School Training Symposium. And every single year, a gathering of about 200 to 300, all of the small business owners, right? These are not the private equity-backed companies that are sending in their guys. It's all of the craftsmen who come together to learn from the best trainers and the best technical experts in the industry about topics like indoor air quality and ventilation and variable speed and all the different sort of bleeding edge technologies. And I was struck by, as I went down to this conference, I was struck by, wow, like these are all, you know, small business owners with 2 or 3 technicians, and they're still coming here to learn the trade and improve their sort of craftsmanship. And it was clear to me very quickly that the one of the biggest bottlenecks to heat pump deployment, to doing better quality work, to incorporating building science practices was just admin and paperwork. And that was the journey that led to and inspired WorkHero.
And where did you start in terms of once you had that aha that this paperwork was a time suck and the craftsmen just wanted to do the work and you wanted to, you know, take the burden off their plate and also give them their time back? I mean, it seems like there's a chicken and egg in terms of it's like, well, I need the help, but you know, I'm too busy to vet someone new, and I also don't trust, you know, some outsider coming in and telling me, you know, and handing over the keys to this very important part of my business. So yeah, where did you start?
Yeah, great question. We started with people instead of software. So, and when I say people, I mean hiring expert office managers. So there was one close friend and contractor from the industry named Ryan Walker at Skywalker HVAC, great name business, who I always like to talk about. He's based in southern New Hampshire, so not too far from you, Jason. And he was someone that we'd spent a lot of time with in that first year. And then he went through a big change, which is that he decided one of his friends had actually sold his company. And Debbie, the office manager at that other company, had a need for work. And Ryan said, you know what, and Ryan was at 3 technicians, about $1 million in revenue, and sort of in that sweet spot where the amount of overhead and admin starts to really hurt. And Ryan decided to hire Debbie. Debbie came in. She had expertise in the industry. She knew, she knew what good invoicing workflows looked like. She knew what good lead generation and lead capture looked like. She knew how to build a price book. And she had all of those systems from her former company. She came in and transformed his business. In a few months, had really significantly, I don't want to say turn things around, but put in a few different systems, one of them being a price book, one of them being better invoicing and cash flow systems, a couple of things around lead capture and marketing that I can talk about. And the upshot of that was a business that, if Ryan so chose, could grow from 1 million to 5 million. And so our insight there was, wow, the difference between a good and a great HVAC business often comes down to the Debbies of the world. And so we said, instead of giving these small business owners who we knew we wanted to build for really the small guys in the industry, as I keep talking about, we said they don't need more software. But what they do need is just someone who they can talk to, who knows the industry, that can build systems for them and that can take the work off their plate. So that's what we did. We hired a bunch of expert office managers and offered them out on a fractional basis. And that was our wedge. That was our starting point. That was really the tip of the spear, if you will, for our services. We also saw, and we can talk more about, sort of where AI and LLMs have gone in the last few years, but we saw the opportunity to start with that human and then build automated workflows around their work. So our approach has always been to do the work manually from the beginning and then build as much leverage around those office managers as possible.
And just given how in-person these businesses are, how have you dealt with in-person versus remote? And to the extent that it has been remote, how have you made it work given how much in-person is the way that relationships and trust get built, but also just that things get communicated, since often the data's in people's heads versus this is my assumption, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's in people's heads versus like in GitHub or in some central system nicely organized.
Yeah, that brings me to how what are the actual not the ideal workflows of a contractor and how they should be using their Service Titan or their field service software plus QuickBooks plus their email, but how do they actually like day to day, what does that look like? And I would describe where most of the data lives. It's in a few places. It is first and foremost just in their heads, and it never goes anywhere else. If it does go somewhere else, it might get written down on a sheet of paper. Increasingly, that might get written down on Apple Notes or whatever the sort of fastest, lowest friction place for note taking is. And then some over email. When you're coordinating with a jurisdiction about a permit or a rebate, customers will email you, your supply house will email you, so you have some data in your email. And you have, if you're Ryan, right? We think a lot about the guy at about $1 million in revenue. You have some data in your field service software. You're not just using QuickBooks. You've decided to use Jobber or House Call Pro. Maybe you've decided to use Service Titan. And I would argue you're usually using about 20% of the feature set of that field service software. And so there's some customer data, invoicing data, pricing data, a little bit of data in that software. And so the challenge is how do you leverage and make sure that information gets from disparate systems into one place. And I would just say as a starting point that the incumbent software does, as a system of record, requires that you manually upload that. And the primary challenge of the software, especially Service Titan, over the last 10 years has been to get technicians to use these mobile apps and make sure that data makes its way in. And I think that we are seeing, and WorkHero is not the only one, a sort of huge proliferation of new AI native ways to collect information. We can talk about voice. We can talk about even just connecting to all those previous systems I mentioned, like adding a phone number to your text thread with technicians, or adding us in a way as a user to that notes app where you're already taking your notes, certainly integrating with your email. And so we can pull and leverage a lot of those disparate sources of data. So that helps a lot with the remote part. I think you brought up a question around trust too, which would love to dig into more, but I'll just say what we've found is that having a team of experts who really speak the language and know this industry as deeply as these owners goes a long way.
And so I'm curious, if the systems of record require the manual input, and now there's these new AI tools for proliferation, separate from WorkHero, where do you think that goes? Like, will the incumbents of today be the incumbents of tomorrow? Will they, are these features and not companies that are coming out on the AI side, or are they wedges to then get their tentacles into more strategic stuff over time and ultimately, take the systems of record on in a more meaningful way?
It's a great question. I think your guess is as good as mine. I think across the broader software landscape, we see that battle between incumbents and startups. It's the, we've seen that sort of market dynamic repeat itself over many years. And there are structural advantages that the startups have, and there are structural advantages, obviously, that the incumbents have. One thing I would say is, there's a couple of things about the existing incumbents that are that make it challenging, right? And one of those is, as I mentioned, they can be hard to use, especially if you are a smaller owner. And so, figuring out ways, and all of these software companies are now working on this, figuring out easier ways to get that data is important. And the second is they are general instead of custom. And this is, I think, the really interesting part of all of this is the race to figure out what does it mean to build truly custom software. So ServiceTitan serves 50 different trades, maybe 100 different trades, because they have HVAC and electrical and plumbing, but they also have window cleaning and and junk removal and a huge fire safety and a huge number of different trades, which is amazing. And ServiceTitan is a world-class company that has helped thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of business owners. Because they had to build for that many different verticals, there's only so much customization that you can offer. And if you are I'll take some of the companies we work with, if you are a residential heat pump focused contractor in Colorado, or you're a small commercial refrigeration contractor in Massachusetts, the specific ways that you invoice, the specific ways that you need to take some of your field data and make sure it gets into a portal, like a rebate portal, all of those are fairly custom workflows that aren't always maybe they're going to be replicated for a few other contractors in your area, but they're really, really quite custom. And so obviously in this era where it's cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to build software, there's an opportunity to be able to build in that custom way. And there's different approaches. I have one friend in the space who I'll shout out, Todd, who's building a platform that actually allows the business owners themselves to build their own software. And that's one exciting approach, and I'm really curious to see how that works. We have a thesis at WorkHero that we want to build as much custom software and workflows for our customers, but they're not going to be the ones to build it. And so there's lots of different approaches out there, and I think everyone's learning at the same time right now.
And it seems, and again, correct me if I misspeak or if my understanding is off, but that you have a recurring model and that it is kind of office management holistically. So I guess my question is, I know you've been at it a few years now, but when you came into market, did you start recurring, or did you prove yourselves a different way? And did you start holistically, or did you start with more narrow tasks that you felt equipped to take on confidently and that were less threatening to the customers as a newer shop or a newer firm?
We always started with a recurring subscription, and we always started fairly wide. And that's a different approach than a lot of software-only companies take. If you're a software-only point solution, the classic model is to build one specific narrow point solution for maybe a few different customer segments, right? And so that's where there's a lot of horizontal software that exists. And we've inverted that. And so we're building we're building for a pretty narrow segment of customers today at the bottom of the market, who are, by the way, just amazing small business owners that I'd love to talk more about. But for that segment, we're building a pretty wide offering. And the reason that we can do that is because we're not just building software. We have this service arm. We have this incredible team of office managers who can handle, they can handle some of the core workflows like invoicing or rebates or the price book that I keep talking about. But they can also, when a contractor just needs to order new uniforms or like purchase a new van or put up a job description to hire a new guy, there's this set of ad hoc tasks that no software would ever be able to handle, but a human can handle. And so that's always been our approach, is go wide. There's a couple of things that we have not gone after yet, including a lot of the front office. So call answering and scheduling and dispatching is a core bundle of tasks that office managers do today that we don't yet touch. And then there's bookkeeping, which is at the sort of at the tail end, if you will, of the contractor's workflow, and something that we're currently offering through a partner, but are exploring how we might be able to offer more of. Yeah.
And so the typical customer that you serve, do they have an office manager already?
Some do and some don't. It depends, and some have what I would describe as a part of one. So for those guys that are at around 500K in revenue, often they have no office manager at all, and we can come in and be that fractional person for them. It's great for them because they usually can't afford a full-time person at that point. If you're a much larger shop at 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, we can also work with you. We usually, for those shops, there's a high throughput of admin work, like rebates and permits that is bogging down there. Maybe they have a couple of front office CSRs and so we take that on for them. And then there's that sort of middle ground, which is the $1 million shop. Usually at that point they have a spouse or a cousin or a brother who's working part-time to just help out, even if it isn't their passion in life to be doing that paperwork, and so we can take that off their plate.
As you work across customers, how much of what you provide is cookie cutter from customer to customer? And I know you mentioned that the actual delivery of it can be custom, but I'm just curious in terms of the things that you're taking off their plate. Does it tend to be the same things from customer to customer, or do these engagements look more like engagements where they're more customized?
They are increasingly becoming common, and we're building a set of common workflows. I'm going to do something a little bit atraditional, and you tell me, Jason, if this will work. We're doing this over video, correct? Can I actually pull up something and share my screen?
Yeah.
Will that be able to show up?
So there'll be a YouTube with video, and there'll also be an audio only. So the audio only might not be able to see it, but I think it's fine.
Great. Well, what I'll do is
you can talk through it.
Exactly. I'll do my best to talk through it here. So let's see. Make sure that. All right. Can you see this?
I can.
And you're looking at a graphic, right? Not just. I think I had it up at first.
It's the rectangle in the middle is moving.
Great. So for the non-YouTube podcasters, what we're looking at is a visualization that WorkHero's built that takes if you imagine a small contractor, and this applies to a lot of contractors, not just HVAC. If you imagine that shop as an assembly line, like a factory assembly line, with the left side being marketing, and when the lead first comes in the door. And then the series of steps from lead to estimate to dispatch to job being completed to closing out the job to a set of paperwork, including a permit and a rebate, to job costing, invoicing, collections, and then cash in the door. So if you think about every small contractor's job at the end of the day, or what their focus, we believe WorkHero should be, is to accelerate the throughput from lead in the door to cash. And that's relatively straightforward and obvious for most as I talk this out loud. But there are a few areas at WorkHero, given our unique vantage point, again, because we are not just the software, but we're also just doing the work manually. We have, I think, a unique vantage point of where in the process these, where in the sort of factory floor this gets stuck. And I think jobs get stuck commonly in a couple of places. One is the estimate building, and that's because they don't have yet a good enough price book. And so I can talk about that. The second is the closeout process, which refers to after the job is completed, have you effectively collected the photos, the notes, and any other information you need from the technician in the field to then be able to proceed with the rest of the paperwork, including the invoice, but also including the permit and the rebate and the equipment registration. And then the third area that...
It sounds like a doctor.
Yeah.
The paperwork.
Yeah. Oh, it's that's actually a very it's a great analogy, and doctors have assistants too, right? And increasingly, I think in the same way, you've seen a lot of admin inflation in the medical field. And then the third area to just quickly mention is the way that this is job costing, and the way that job costing, if done correctly, should actually lead to a virtuous loop here and make its way back to inform how one prices and then how one is quoting. So job costing refers to the process of a budget versus actuals on every single job. So taking the quote, what you quoted, how long you quoted the job would take and the associated equipment and materials, and then looking at what you actually spent on the job in the form of primarily labor but also equipment and materials. And if you, and this is the way we built some automations at WorkHero, but there's other companies that can do this too. If you're effectively job costing on every job, you start to learn and see very quickly patterns in, am I losing money on a specific part of my business, like my service business? Or am I not priced correctly in my market? So there's a lot that comes from this kind of repetition, and so job costing is among other things, one of the really important things that we take on. And then the last thing I'll mention is just there's a couple of undergirding systems here. Bookkeeping, the price book, and then what we call visibility, which refers to the dashboards daily or weekly that you should, as any small business owner, should have to make sure that you have accurate information about your business to make decisions. So long way of answering your question here, Jason, but what we're finding is that increasingly as we've learned this industry and learned the workflows, there are a set of common tasks represented here which we are helping every one of our customers with, basically. And of course there's some variation and lots of other things we do for them as well, but this is, I thought this would be fun to show this this graphic as a way of talking about our work.
So that was very helpful. Thank you. One question that leads me to is you've talked about how some shops have an office manager and some don't, and and how you can work across both. It strikes me that just like the landscape is fragmented with the shops, the landscape is fragmented with tools, right? And different shops have wildly different technical stacks and software tools that they're already using. Do you work with what's there? Do you swap those out and work with your stuff? Is that also custom from shop to shop?
Yeah, so right now we work with their existing systems. Primarily, we integrate with the three largest field service software in the industry, so ServiceTitan, Jobber, and HouseCall Pro. And so, and then we also integrate with QuickBooks Online and their email. And so that allows us to serve the vast majority of small HVAC contractors in the industry. There is a long tail of other software out there that we are building integrations with too, but that's how we work today. So think of us like a sort of an AI plus human layer that sits on top of those systems and is able to take action and handle all the work.
And I'm curious, there's the tactical stuff you can take off their plate to enable them to provide the judgment, but there's also judgment that you could be bringing to the table, especially as you get more reps. How do you balance tactical versus judgment, and also how do you balance human versus machine? And that's kind of both where you are today, but also how you're seeing it play out over time in both of those dimensions.
I love this question. To the question of tactical versus judgment first, we are, one of the benefits, again, of working with us is that we're not just giving you automations. And we're also not just giving you a virtual assistant. You may know that a lot of small business owners out there will hire a VA that maybe is overseas, and if you train them correctly, can handle some of this work. But at WorkHero, we have this team of experts who have all helped scale businesses from 500K to 5 million or 5 million to 20 million. I mean, these are deep experts in the industry. And so we like to say we're opinionated. We actually have opinions about what a good price book or pricing system looks like. What the best way to organize your maintenance plans in your software. Even some opinions about, like, during shoulder season, during the quieter usually fall and spring seasons, depending on where you are, like, how much should you be spending on marketing as a percentage of your revenue? These are all things that the primary way so far that we've been able to help provide that judgment to our contractors is because of our expertise and the team that we have. We also, and this gets into your second question, are increasingly building, as we add more and more contractors, collective intelligence on the best practices for the industry. And that's where there are lots of coaching groups and sort of networks out there. Some of them are quite expensive, I'll be honest, that charge tens of thousands of dollars to, if you're a contractor at $1 million or $2 million in revenue and you want to get to 10 million, you join this coaching group, you $50,000 and you go sit in a seminar and learn some of these systems. And those are great. They've worked. I think they've worked for a lot of contractors. But our belief in this new world that we live in is that that kind of best practice sharing that used to be delivered through gated communities and seminars, and actually you usually had to travel to them, will now be delivered through and delivered in real time on a given week when a contractor needs to change their pricing or whatever it might be, and really put into their fingertips. And so that's one of our principles at WorkHero. The last thing I'll say about that question of what humans do versus AI do is, I think WorkHero is positioned in a really interesting way to be learning sort of what can be automated and what can't be automated. And our belief from the very beginning has been not to try to automate everything. We always believed in what we call human-in-the-loop operations. And if you look at charts from economists of which jobs are most likely to be automated, office and admin personnel is at the top of that list. But what we're proving is, instead of all of that value of AI just being like labor displacement, we're seeing actually labor productivity. Basically, if you give the kinds of experts that we're hiring at WorkHero tools and workflows, they can get a lot more done. And so our goal, just like with our contractors, our goal with our office team is to take off their plate all of the routine crap that they still have to deal with, so that they can come in and really focus on the coaching and the judgment. And so that's another journey that we're on.
So a couple questions that brings up. One is privacy, because if I own one of these shops, on the one hand, the more you use my data and everyone's data to make the system smarter, the better service you get from me. But also, I'm giving up my secret sauce, right? Like, I don't want my competitors to benefit from all the experience that I've developed in the School of Hard Knocks. So how do you think about treading that balance?
Yeah, I think part of your question is like literally maybe what are our privacy policies at WorkHero, but I think the more important question you asked is also how should a contractor who's thinking about signing up with WorkHero think about that trade-off of, like, should I give up my data and what should I get as a result? And what I would say there is, first of all, we like a lot of companies are working really hard to put into place the right AI makes it really easy to de-anonymize and pull apart. You see this in the healthcare industry a lot right now. HIPAA is a really important law in place, and a lot of companies are able to learn what needs to be learned from that data without attaching it to any specific contractor. And in the same way, there are a contractor might say, well, I don't want my competitor down the street to figure out my pricing. And the first thing we tell them is, well, don't worry, we probably don't work with your competitor down the street yet. But if we did, and if we were making a pricing recommendation to him, we wouldn't be, nothing we do is referencing any of our other customers' data. But the more important thing that we would tell them is in this industry, I think a lot about how the small contractors, if it isn't clear in my hat, I think a lot about how small contractors can work together to create a rising tide lifts all boats dynamic to compete against these huge private equity platforms. And one of the ways that these PE platforms are winning right now is through sophisticated data mining of marketing data and pricing data. And so our goal is to do the same and help small contractors compete.
Another question that I find myself thinking about is there's a difference between teaching someone to fish and feeding them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you feed them and don't teach them how to fish, right, or catch food, right, then they'll be reliant on others and not building out the capability in-house. If this is a core capability to make the business run, should that be a concern? Has that come up as a concern? And how would you or how do you respond to it when it does come up?
Good question. There are a set of recurring paperwork needs of a small business that aren't necessarily about learning how to fish, but you just need to continue to improve the throughput of, as I was showing you earlier. So if a contractor decides to hire us, we can build you some systems like a price book or something else, and then they decide to stop working with us, which of course has happened before. Someone still needs to be the one to make sure that factory line gets accurately managed, right? And unblock those things. And so they'll probably have to end up hiring someone else. It might be an existing full-time office manager, it might be someone else. And so to that end, our belief at WorkHero is that there is both an efficiency and a set of tasks like rebates and permits and admin that no contractor ever wants to do. And if we can get really, really good at doing it, we'll help improve their cash flow, help them grow their business. And even if they end up hiring someone full-time to come in and do an admin, to come in and do something else, we can just handle that work. The other part of that actually, I think, is around AI. And so we have had contractors say, well, can't you just teach me how to automate these systems, and I'll automate them myself, and then we'll part ways. And this is something we're seeing play out right now. There is the building of agents or workflows, and then there's the maintenance of them. I don't know if you've heard of or read the book, The Maintenance of Everything. But maintenance, just like maintenance plans in the HVAC industry, maintenance is a increasingly underappreciated. It is an underappreciated part of our economy writ large, and certainly we I think are starting to see this for any company that's building a huge amount of agents. And so these things break; they require tweaking all of the time, and we have the team to do it. And so what we often this is one of the things we talk to our contractors all the time about. Is like, we're happy to build these things for you, and then go our separate ways, but they are going to break. And so that's a dynamic that I think our contractors understand. One
of the things I've been thinking about, this discussion aside, is how the technology is changing so quickly under the hood, but in order to take advantage of it, you can't just stick it into how things work, right? The body needs to accept the organ if it's doing something different. Then the workflows and the people need to adjust, or said the other way, like it needs to, like they need a match, right? But the capabilities of the technology are improving so quickly, and these shops seem to be used to, assessing their technology stack at certain intervals, like back to what you were talking about, the training, right? Like you don't think people should go to coaching like once per quarter, like they should have real time help and guidance to tweak this and do that, versus just static, like, at these milestones and then nothing in between, right? Well, the technology is fluid, but the addressing the tech stacks is at certain intervals, and the intervals probably have been pretty far away from each other historically. So I guess my question is, how much of the existing capability is actually getting utilized in practice? And then as the capability is increasing so fast, how can you keep up? Because even if you can keep up, it might require changes on the client side that they can't keep up on the people and workflow side to properly take advantage of it with the guardrails so that they don't actually, touch a third rail.
Yeah. I'll give you a couple examples. So you can't automate a broken process, as we have learned. We've tried. You can. So if you have a contractor who is not yet caught up in, maybe he's only using 10 or 20% of his field service software, and so he's invoicing in a very manual way. So we had a contractor who his technicians did not want to use House Call Pro. They couldn't get their notes into House Call Pro. So instead, what they did, as crazy as it sounds, is on every job, after the job was complete, the technician went to a Google Sheet, which I don't know why Google Sheet is easier than House Call Pro, but they would click on their phones and they would type in their notes from the job. And so previously, the workflow from there for invoicing would be to read those notes, reference their price book, which I think at the time was mainly in the owner's head, and then from there manually type up an invoice inside of House Call Pro, which this was a shop that was doing 8 to 10 service calls a day, and so we're talking about 5-10 hours of invoicing every single week. And what we found, we first actually automated their more inefficient process. So we actually took that Google Sheet, we built out a price book, and then we built an AI to reference those technician notes, reference the price book, and automatically generate an invoice inside of House Call Pro. So what we were doing was effectively optimizing a non-optimal process. From there, we then pushed them to, after they saw the power of doing it that way and saw some efficiency gains, we sort of coached them into a better invoicing workflow. And so I think that's a good example of what you're talking about, which is, as I understand the question, there is a level of best practice and use of their current software that we still sort of need to take them from here up to here. And what we found is, even if they have processes that are non-optimal or manual in some way, we can build, as a starting point, we can build simple workflows or automations that maybe don't even use AI. Maybe it's just a set of deterministic code, but is helping them send a reminder to a technician or whatever it might be. And then from there, we can build what I would describe as a more robust, true automation or agent. And so, long answer to your question, but I think a lot of our work at WorkHero is not just building automations, but also building the capacity and doing a set of education with the owner to help them understand what more optimal processes look like, which is a journey and requires the kind of office team that we have. Because I think if we didn't speak their language, if we hadn't built trust, if we weren't checking with them usually every day, if not every week, then I'm not sure we'd be able to be able to rewire their processes in the ways that we are.
So on the one hand, if they're drowning in paperwork and you can take the paperwork off that they don't want to do and that's sucking their time, then they can, be more efficient and they can work less on the weekend, spend more time with their family, maybe, spend more time with judgment, maybe, drive more business through the pipeline, whatever it is, like, more productive use of the time than the mindless stuff that's weighing them down. But on the other hand, you're a do more with less model, meaning that, the output of one office manager looks like X, and over time it looks like, 1.2X, and then it looks like 1.5X, and then it looks like 2X, and then it looks like 5X, right? And so on the other hand, it's like, well, first they're coming for the office manager, then they're going to come for the project manager, then they're going to come for the estimator, then they're going to, then they're going to come for me, right? If I'm a worker in these shops, should I fear automation?
By worker, do you mean a technician, or what kind of worker are you talking about?
Maybe touch on each.
Yeah.
Who should and who shouldn't?
Yeah, I mean, this is a question that economists are asking themselves a lot right now. I don't know if you've heard of the lump of labor fallacy.
I have not.
The lump of labor fallacy just says that those that are scared of AI taking all of our jobs are assuming a finite lump of labor that exists in our economy that is not dynamic. And so the best example, I think, is Microsoft Excel. When Microsoft Excel first came out, there was a set of financial analysts and bookkeepers in the industry, and everyone looked at Excel and they looked at what these bookkeepers had done, which, at that point they were doing so much by hand or using other antiquated computer systems, and they said surely their jobs are going to get automated or displaced. And instead what happened is Microsoft Excel spawned like an entire industry of financial analysts, right? And there was this, the same thing happened with bank tellers and the ATM machine, lots of things. And so I think especially for any of the industries that you're focused on, Jason, for this podcast, that are in the real world, physical industries, and require what I think of as like, there is, sort of physical versus any sort of digital or knowledge work, and there's routine versus non-routine. And in that 2x2 matrix, I can't remember which economist says this, but it is the work that is physical and non-routine, which is the hardest to automate. And so certainly, you hear this time and time again, like AI is not coming for the job of an electrician anytime soon. And by the job of an electrician, I mean actually like going in and wiring up a new panel or whatever else. It is going to meaningfully change those industries. I think especially like combination hardware, software, where in the future, like maybe they're wearing something like Meta glasses and they're able to do diagnostics really quickly, and that data is being automatically uploaded to the office, and there's like lots of things you can imagine that are exciting. But I don't think their jobs are going away. And in the same way, I think any other people in these HVAC companies, so long as they're using the latest tools and learning all the time, I think there's going to continue to be more and more jobs, and new jobs too, new types of jobs for these people.
Switching gears a bit, so it strikes me that there's kind of an asset super light way that you could do this, where you provide tooling to existing staffs. And then on the other extreme, it's like if we got really good at, whipping the guts into shape, from the outside, we'd be well equipped to evaluate, where we can do this the best and be predictable about how much we could do it, and then we can go start owning the assets in an asset heavier way. There's the financial aspect of where can I make the most money and what's the best business, but then there's also the mission, which it strikes me is important to you, and sometimes there's good ways to make money that don't feel good from a mission standpoint. But I'm curious, looking through each of those vectors, why did you pick the lane that you did, and did you think about either of the other ones that I mentioned?
Yeah, it's both mission and market, and so I'll talk about both. I mean, first on the mission side, I mentioned briefly like the way that I grew up and the impact I saw of a small business owner. and my uncle who was able to change his life and the life of his family because of his electrical business, and then spending time with as many small business owners as we have. I think of one of our the contractors that we work with is the Steele family, and they're in Michigan. And when I say the Steele family, I mean there are 11 members of Steele Heating and Cooling, and 10 of them are Steeles. The only one that's not a Steele, they will tell you and clarify, is like a close family friend, and so they consider them. And so these are certainly family-owned businesses. These are people that care about doing high-quality work, and they care about the climate in a lot of cases, and installing more heat pumps. And so for all of those reasons, we want to help these businesses. Sometimes they want to grow. Sometimes they just want to save time so that they can make their lives easier and go spend more time with their families. And so that has always been a huge part of our why we do what we do. This is why this hat. Our goal and belief is that the future of this industry is not more and more roll-ups, but think of it a little bit like we think of a lot of ourselves like building the next Toast, a software company that's helped power the restaurant industry and helped thousands of small business enterprises take off, instead of like the Uber model or like a private equity platform where you assume all the value has to happen by squishing them all together and actually owning them. So that's the mission side. On the market side, I'll just say, despite all of the hype about private equity, less than 1% by number of businesses, less than 1% of all HVAC businesses in the country, there's 140,000 of them, have ever been touched by private equity. That's not by revenue, and we could talk about that, but there is a huge long tail of small businesses in this industry who need help, who need more help running their businesses that are far below the EBITDA or revenue thresholds that would make them ever interesting from an acquisitive standpoint from private equity. And so we're really excited at WorkHero, both because of our mission, but also because it's a huge market to help as many of them as possible.
So if you look 5 years out, if WorkHero is wildly successful beyond your wildest imagination, what have you achieved?
Yeah, we've meaningfully helped the Ryans of the world at Skywalker HVAC, the family-owned businesses like Steele, the quality-focused contractors like our friend Fletcher in Colorado, grow their businesses, save time, and spend time with their families. That's it. I actually hope a lot of them do end up choosing to either sell to their employees through an ESOP or sell to private equity, because that kind of wealth generation is another huge part of our mission. So, by the way, for all the reasons we talk about private equity, if a business owner so chooses to monetize all of their hard work through an obvious, exit path, I think that's great, and I support it. And so I do hope that we see 5 years hence, 10 years hence, a lot of our WorkHero customers have with our help grown and made their businesses far more efficient and attractive, and they've decided to to monetize that or leave it to their employees in some way that is impactful. That's it at the end of the day. We could talk about our growth at WorkHero or the business opportunity, but that's really what it's about.
And then from an industry standpoint, if you look a little further out, let's say 10 years out, how different is it, and what are the things that are the same in terms of how the industry operates, and then what are the things that are different at that time if you had to predict?
I don't think there will be meaningful differences in the shape of the market with respect to industry concentration. As I mentioned, I think you're going to continue to see a deeply fragmented industry. I think it's structurally so. I think there are some people that talk about distributors are going away and you're only going to have OEMs and contractors. I don't think that's going to happen. I think distributors play a pretty important role. And and I think the general way that contractors deliver services and value to customers will continue to remain. A couple of big areas that will change that I see coming. Obviously, in the back office side, I think you're going to see some fundamental changes to the way that software can act like an assistant instead of like a tool, and how that gets done. Diagnostics, I mentioned, is going to be a really interesting area of innovation. So there's great software companies out there like MeasureQuick that have already jump-started how quickly a technician can diagnose airflow issues or any sort of issues with the heating or cooling system. We're going to see a lot more innovation there using different kind of hardware and sensors. And then third, I would just quickly mention the business model themselves. I think you are going to see, because of the heat pump moment that we're in, because of the amount of state and federal dollars, which will continue to flow, I think, largely, you're going to see some, and you already have seen some, heat pump focused businesses that don't work on any furnaces or oil-based systems, and those businesses, actually, from a business model perspective, the way that they are owning the systems or servicing them is going to look a little bit different. So I think you will see some innovation there as well.
And that 5 years out, we talked about the mission for WorkHero, but what about in terms of what you're actually doing? Are you still serving the same kinds of customers around office management? Are you serving more kinds of customers? Are you serving existing customers in more ways? Will you expand, and how will you expand if you had to predict?
Our hope and belief is that we can continue to serve more deeply the small HVAC contractor. That is our passion and our mission, and we see what I mentioned, bookkeeping or call answering, or lots of other ways that we see that we could do even more for them. And so that is our most immediate priority in the next couple of years. In the next 5 years, I would not be surprised. We are already working with some combi HVAC plumbing shops that do both. Plumbing would be the most obvious next vertical for us, followed by electrical. And we get this question a lot. We are very focused for now just on HVAC, but there is a future. I hope there's a future where we are large enough and successful enough that we can grow to serve small contractors in those other industries. I don't think at this point we are going to be ever partnered with or working with any of the really big PE shops in the industry. That's just our solution wouldn't really work for them, and that's just not part of our mission and our DNA.
And if you could change one thing outside of the scope of your purview that would dramatically accelerate your ability to fulfill your mission, what would it be, and how would you change it?
I would answer something not in the industry, but about the large models and labs themselves, and some of the frontiers of advancement there, specifically around computer use. By that I mean the ability for AI to replicate the sort of human native ways of using a computer, clicking around on a browser, clicking in and logging into a rebate portal and being able to fill out that information, being able to make judgment calls when there's some branching logic in a sort of portal like that. And about a year ago, there was an apparent breakthrough in computer use, I think first from a Chinese model and then from Claude. But what we've actually seen, I would argue, in ways that, in general, these models have moved much faster than I think any of us expected. Computer use is an area where things are still, it's hard. It's one of these real challenges. And so I would love to see computer use take off. And I think we hope and expect that it will in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And when it does, I think it's going to dramatically change the kind of work that we can do.
Awesome. Well, Furman, this has been such a great discussion. Sorry to make you a little late for your next meeting. Is there anything I didn't ask that you wish I did, or any parting words you'd like to leave with listeners?
Jason, I'm glad that you are back in the game, and particularly focused on the trades and these industries. And I would say that maybe for anyone listening, knowing a little bit about your audience, I would just say there is an opportunity to build for small businesses, not just for the large ones. There's an opportunity, and I think AI uniquely gives you this opportunity to create the new solutions and supports that really work for and are native to how small business owners work, as opposed to legacy software that really only works for enterprise. And so for anyone listening, I hope that you take this motivation to go out and build something for small business owners in another industry.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Furman. Love what you're doing. Love how you're doing it, and grateful for you making the time. Best of luck to you and to WorkHero.
Thanks, Jason.
That's it for this episode of Built Forward. I hope you enjoyed it. If you found it useful, share it with someone building in the industry, and follow the show so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.